Welcome back to the Pain Points podcast, where the world meets business. In courtesy of today's soundtrack brought to us by StreamYard, we're feeding ducks this morning as we ramp up building our businesses, bringing you insight that you can use to prepare as you build your business. And you were saying it offline. You said it about being greedy. What was the quote?
Warren Buffett, right? Be fearful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are fearful. So there's a lot of fear rising in the market right now. Just about everything that's going on, recession, which sometimes makes me wonder if everybody's talking about it. It's usually not that obvious, right? It's usually like a side swipe event, a black swan. People aren't really prepared, or they get lulled into sleep and then it happens, right? So.
And so that's why we're doing this. That's why we're doing this. Why we're making these pods, and that's the direction we're going in an even more crystallized manner. Of, you need someone in your back pocket or in your earbuds that's going to be with you in the battle, and that's where we're going with you.
Yeah, I mean, we're in it. We're building businesses, and we're consuming the content.
Right.
We're digesting it, but more importantly, trying to take that to you guys in a way that's pragmatic that you can use to prepare.
And so that being said, we it's funny, we've gone through weeks where we go through the rundown. We don't, but I like how we've just been jumping right into it. And
me too.
And so this first story here, you have a headline here: 10 of the last 14 rate cuts have led to a recession.
Yeah, absolutely.
So pull this up for you guys.
And I actually strategically strung all of the content together today to tell a bit of a story. And then we're going to cap it off with hey, what should I do to prepare or to combat what's coming down the pipe?
Okay.
So this guy, Nick, I can't even say his last name, Jurley, he runs a YouTube channel called Rev Consulting, talks a lot about real estate. He's a little bit of a doom and gloomer, but he does put out some great content. And this is truth, this piece of content that he posted on Twitter, which is 10 of the last 14 rate cut cycles directly led to recessions. The only time they didn't were 1966, 1984, 1995, and 1998. The economy was noticeably stronger than it was today. Less debt, better GDP, more savings, and a reduction in unemployment rather than an increase like we are seeing today. And I'll piggyback that with a couple years after 1998, we had the dot-com bubble. A couple years after 1984, we had the savings and loan crisis. So again, 2 years later, the recession finally hit, or the market finally collapsed. The chart that's up on the screen is just showing you those different rate cuts, and the periods that are highlighted in green are showing you the times when the market didn't correct or we didn't move into a recession. That said, what's most interesting about where we're at today is the Fed's been saying, hey, we're targeting our inflation target. All of a sudden they cut 50 basis points, which would be considered a pretty aggressive rate cut. And so it begs the question of, why are they not telling us something that they should be telling us, right? So then the next one that I put in there, just to kind of piggyback off of that, is in and around the SBA 7A program.
Yeah.
And so again, I told you we're building a story here, so I wanted to quickly jump to that next one. But this is from SBA Ray. He's a great follow on Twitter. He's an SBA lender, has been an SBA broker, has been in the SBA game for a really long time. But he says 9/30 marks the end of the fiscal year for SBA, and I'll be looking to see how much higher the default rate is. As you can see here, the default rate is up 40% year over year, but relatively low overall from 2020 to 2022. Acquisition loans have lower default rates than startup loans. Larger acquisitions have lower default rates compared to smaller ones. Where do we go from here? 2024 default rates will be higher. Here's why. 2023 did not feel the full impact of higher rates, which tend to lag 24 months. Lenders tend to offer deferments and do everything possible to avoid default. The question is, how much higher? And a couple of reasons for this is, what most people don't understand about SBA 7A loans is their floating rate debt. So people who had a 3% loan in 2020 are paying 10, 11% now.
Wow.
So that definitely has a material impact on cash flow. But this is also just, again, echoing what I was talking about. Although 66, 84, and 98 didn't have a recession after a rate cut, they came a couple years later. Why? Because it takes a little while for all that to shake out in the market. And so if you've been wrestling with cash flow for the last 24 to 36 months, all of a sudden that's probably becoming a real thing because you're hitting the upper ceiling of what you can actually charge because the consumer is feeling the same impact, right? And so it's not as easy as just, well, just increase your prices. It's like, well, we're at peak prices, we're at peak inflation, and we've watched a couple segments on here where, you know, groceries are 4 times more expensive than they were
Right.
2 or 3 years ago. So that's where people really start to feel it, right? They don't care about what's happening in the stock market. Like, oh, stock market's up, home values are up. It's like, well, that's all. One, most people aren't in the stock market, and two, if they do own a home, it's not real. Like, they can't touch equity.
Right.
It's what we would call dead money, right? And so who cares? The consumer is feeling it at the gas pump. They're feeling it in their insurance. They're feeling it in their taxes. And those are the things that we need to be paying attention to as entrepreneurs, right? Of how do we navigate that? How do we play the game and prepare for winter, because it's always coming.
Yeah. Man, I want to get to the next slide as we continue to build your story, but I have a question I'm going to frame it up for the person who is just now starting their business, or they're just now buying their first business or preparing to.
Yep.
When we read these tweets from people who have been in the space for a long time, you know, their opinions, they might not be notable names, but their opinions are really valuable opinions, and they're bringing insight and data. And so my question is, for that person who's just jumping into that first acquisition, or they're really geeked about it right now, everyone's talking about entrepreneurship through acquisition.
Yep.
I believe the question I have for you, just from your seat, because you're in it, you just went through and bought a business using all of these apparatuses available. What um, what can blindside them that they're not thinking about? Because I think there's just a lot of talk and opinions, and the reality of economics, I think, has been at a distance from us for a long time, and it's getting closer.
Yeah.
And it's easy to sell the dream of like buy a business, but what what potentially is out there to really blindside people that they're like, oh, I didn't know this was something I needed to be thinking about.
I always say the number one thing that keeps a business owner awake at night is cash flow. And so you probably underestimate your working capital needs in a business. So be prepared for that. Obviously, be negotiating that when you're closing a deal
Mhm.
to keep working capital in the business. If not, then you need to be baking it into your loan. And if you're working with a good loan broker and a good bank, they're going to understand that. They're going to be able to help you work through that. That's the first thing. Number two, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. You know, you're probably going to be irrationally exuberant about the future for the business, and that's great and all, but you also have to be sober in the truth of, hey, what happens if we don't grow? What happens if we go backwards? And how do we actually maintain reality, right? Patrick Bet-David always says only the paranoid survive.
Yeah.
That is a real thing, and so you have to be realistic about that. Number two, or I guess that would be number three. Number three would be, you know, stepping into entrepreneurship. It's very romanticized at the moment,
Yeah, very much so.
and it's super awesome. It's great, but everything starts and stops with you, and so you better be prepared for that part of it. And when stuff hits the fan and it gets heavy and you're in it, you know, do you run to or from the storm, right? There's a great wisdom that comes from buffaloes. So like bison, like
Yeah.
go Buffs, let's go.
I was waiting for that to get slipped in there.
But what's interesting about like both buffaloes, like alpha buffaloes, is when there's a storm, they run into the storm. They don't run away from it, because they understand that the faster that they can get to and through the storm, the quicker it'll be done. But if they run away from it, it's going to keep following them, right? And so that's one of the differences of like really good entrepreneurs, is they see problems and they just want to tack them straight on, head on, and go right at it, right? And so these types of things, which most of the time would probably scare people, they tend to excite or intrigue entrepreneurs because we're thinking through how the game is being played, right? We talk about the infinite game, right? The game is always changing. And so how are we accommodating because the only rule to the game is to keep the game going as long as possible.
That's good. You dropping gems this morning. Dropping gems. Okay.
So kind of piggybacking off of that, this next one, which you're pulling up,
yep,
is called People Don't Feel Like Buying Homes. And this is from Game of Trades. He's been coming up quite a few times on the last couple of weeks. I say he, could be a she, whoever you are, Game of Trades. We love your content. Keep it coming. But it says, warning, buying conditions have collapsed, now reaching levels only seen 2 times since 1960, which would be 1974 and 1981. Both ended in a recession. So this chart is showing the basically demand for buying homes versus the year. And you can see it fell off of a cliff and matching those low points, which are circled over on the left in comparison to where we are today. And I would tend to agree with that, right? So why is that happening? And we'll click through to the next chart. But this is the real tell, which I think we already know if we're in the market. But if we're looking through,
is it on the?
It's the next one in the doc.
I got you right here. Boom.
Yep. So why is that happening? Well, the U.S. home price to median household income ratio is now 7.2x times higher than the home prices. In other words, the average single-family home in the U.S. costs more than 7 times the median annual household income. This ratio is officially above 7.1x record in 2022 and 6.8x seen in the 2008 housing crisis. By comparison, a few years before 2020 pandemic, the ratio was 5.5x. Mind you, interest rates were also 3 times lower.
Right.
So in just 5 years, home prices have soared 50%, materially outpacing the 17% growth in household income along with interest rates, because everybody's buying these with leverage. Nobody's paying cash for these. Let's be realistic. So it is slowly shifting to a buyer's market. And typically that means some sort of collapse in the housing prices to back that up. The weird thing that we're in right now is we're dropping interest rates, right? So if interest rates are dropping, that's theoretically more inflationary, but that could theoretically already be priced in as well. So it'll be a standoff, right? Because if you can't sell homes, and you see it, I'm on Zillow all the time just to see what's happening in the residential market, and I just like looking at real estate like that all over the country, and you can see the price cuts like I've never seen price cuts before. So we are setting up for definitely a shift. That's for sure.
Well, that's the only thing that is lingering in my mind is like the question I asked myself when you were reading this was like, this seems like so much more important information than what makes the normal feeds and discussion boards and spaces and stuff like that. And I understand it, right? Because it's kind of soothing to not look at this stuff, but look at the more exciting things, or who's going to win the election, and all of this stuff. But it's like, yo, hey, like
my favorite content that came out after a rate cut was all the realtors going, guess what? Interest rates are down. You can now afford to buy a home. So be careful who's actually saying it and what their selfish interest is behind getting excited about rate cuts. Like low key, it's not good. So
yeah. Wow, dude.
All right. So pivoting off of that into something that gives us a more macro perspective.
Yeah.
So, price to income ratios for home prices, that's really talking about the U.S. economy. Same thing for people don't feel like buying homes. Same thing for SBA 7A and rate cuts. But the product manufacturing index report that just came out was not so hot. This actually came out this morning.
Yep. 750.
Yep. So the U.S. S&P Flash PMI report, employment and capacity. Employment fell for a second month running in September and has now fallen in 4 months. That said, the overall decline was only very modest and less than reported in August amid reduced job losses in the service economy. The decline in service jobs was often linked to difficulties replacing leavers, people who left jobs, though the addition of the new staff was curbed by uncertainty about the outlook. Manufacturing payrolls were meanwhile cut at a pace not recorded since June 2020. Excluding the pandemic, the decline in factory jobs was the steepest since January 2010, as an increasing number of firms reported the need to reduce operating capacity in line with weak sales.
Oof.
So let me actually read this real quick. The Purchase Managers Index report is a monthly survey of business executives in the manufacturing and service sectors that provides insight into the health of the economy. The PMI is a forward-looking indicator that can help form decisions by investors, executives, regulators, and policymakers. The PMI is based on a series of questions about the business critical topics: employment, output, prices charged, new orders, supplier deliveries, and company inventories. The PMI is measured on a scale of 0 to 100, with 50 representing no change from the previous month. A PMI above 50 indicates a positive change, while PMI below 50 indicates a negative change. The PMI also includes sub-indices that provide insight into other key economic drivers such as inflation, GDP, capacity utilization, exports, employment, and inventories.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Google AI, for rounding that up for me. So manufacturing is down, consuming is down, and so there's got to be some sort of ending event that's going to come out of that, right?
What do you think that is? Like, what do you, if you could rub a crystal ball, read the text and get some insight from the Lord, and he says, Samson, this is coming for you, your family. You need to bring it to the podcast for these other entrepreneurs.
Well, I would say that follow the smart money, the money that knows more than you do, which is actually what my next piece of content's from, the Cryptonomist, which is actually how BlackRock's preparing for a $35 trillion Fed crisis with Bitcoin. So all signs are pointing to, hey, there's something coming, right? We can't keep up at this pace. We can't keep printing money the way that we're printing it. We're now reaching a point where the cost of goods, the cost of homes, the cost of manufacturing is high, and the actual sell side of homes and manufacturing is low. And so those are the things that typically set off a recession.
Dude, okay, so we have this article here from the Cryptonomist. They lead with BlackRock preparing for $35 trillion Fed crisis with Bitcoin.
Yeah, so it's a couple things here. I have BlackRock's a mixed bag for me because I don't genuinely think that everything they do is kosher and above board.
Yes.
They own 10 trillion in assets. They were haters of Bitcoin until obviously they were on the right side of the trade.
Right. Well, it's funny. We're on the same wavelength because, like, I pulled a Larry Fink clip in for today that I wanted to actually bring up, and so just on the same wavelength of like looking at the big look at the smart money.
Correct. So they're going to be on the right side of the trade. Let's put it that way. And so, why are they buying Bitcoin? Why are they preparing for a dollar collapse? What does that mean? All these other signs are starting to set up that something is coming in the economy. Winter is coming in the economy. And so, own some Bitcoin as my thesis.
Obviously, anything particular you want to look in with the article here?
No, I just wanted to bring that kind of sentiment up. In a capitalistic society, the government relies on us to do two things: create jobs and provide housing, right? And so there's never been a better time to be a business owner, right? If there is some sort of change in the economy, yes, it'll be difficult, but there's a lot of tax advantages, a lot of ways that you can offset, and ways that you can become creative in order to compete and win over customers. People are still going to be spending money. They're just going to be more selective about what they're spending money on and who they're spending it with. So one more to kind of piggyback off of that just would be the alternative asset class to Bitcoin that's also showing there is inflation is winning, basically, is an article from a guy who I like to follow, Peter Schiff, who's a Bitcoin absolute hater. But again, be careful who's saying what. He has a business that helps people sell Bitcoin and buy foreign currencies, or buy and sell gold and foreign currencies. So he's not in love with Bitcoin, although his son is, which is hilarious. He made this post on Twitter that said the Fed claims victory in the inflation war, but gold's record high above $2,630 an ounce proves that inflation won. Gold is rising not just because of inflation the Fed created in the past, but anticipation of much greater inflation the Fed will create in the near future. And one of the things I like about Peter Schiff is he's small government, laissez-faire, anti-Fed. The cure is to just let it all unravel and reset, which I'm a big fan of that. People don't want to hear that, but it's the truth.
Yeah, dude, that is a undeniable truth that it's funny because even in my personal life, and even as I survey the country, and I don't look a lot at global, but I do spend a lot of energy here. That's one of the things I've noticed in the last, let's just say 5 years, is this all out attempt to never let the consequences of these choices become a reality.
Oh man.
But it's not just economics, it's socially, right? You see social.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about abortion, right? Like, we know there are exceptions and there are, serious exceptions, but the exceptions that get lauded out there are, less than 1%. Let's just say, let's be nice and say 1% of the cases in which this stuff happens. So you see this propensity across society of like, I want to do everything I can. I want to do all the reaping. I want to do all the sowing, but I never want to reap it. I never want to reap, especially if it's not on my side of the deck or I have to be accountable to the choices.
The fundamental problem in every situation that we're experiencing right now is the lack of extreme personal accountability,
right?
At the governmental level, at the personal level, at the societal level,
right?
And so if there is no personal accountability for anything that we do, there is no consequence, then this is what you get. And this is how it's been for the last 100 years, right? So we talk about this constantly, but we're coming up to the end of a major 100-year cycle. History doesn't repeat itself, but it definitely tends to rhyme, and people forget about where we were pre-World War II, pre-1929,
right?
In our society as a whole.
Yeah, dude. And what's interesting is too, the more you avoid the consequences of your ideas and, decisions, if they're going to potentially be bad, the more you actually erode the possibility and the reality that you can experience something good, truthfully good.
Yep.
Because in order to have good, you have to have the prospect of bad or evil. And so we want this good, but we want to go away from the evil and the bad and the uncomfortable. But that robs you of actually experiencing the good and goodness, and therefore God in its fullness, And 100%. So it's just foolish, man. And I think if you look at, like you said, history, it rhymes. If you look at, how I remember that thing was trending a couple months ago. Like, do you think of the Roman Empire?
Yeah,
that thing is trending. What's just really funny is you look at these empires that have fallen. It's these same 5 steps, these same 5 periods where they get intelligence, pioneering, and they continue to grow. Then they fall into this decadent space, and this decadent space is marked by the avoidance of the bad in any means possible, which are often bad means of avoiding the bad. And so you have corruption, you have, the devaluing, the destruction of currency, you have law fading away, you have social contracts disappearing, all these things in the name of avoiding the bad, but you're doing the bad to avoid. It's just like,
yeah, exactly. Governments get too big and too bloated. They steal from the people by way of devaluing their currency. And so, I wrote this question down. How do we prepare? How do we combat this as entrepreneurs? And the fundamental answer is control what you can control. I can't control the economy, and I can definitely vote, and I can have impact in my local market, government, but I can't ultimately control everything that's happening. But I can take massive action in my business and do some things to offset that, which in my opinion, you'll hear me say it, people are still spending money. They're just either spending it with you or somebody else. And so triple down on customer service, right? We can triple down on customer service. We can be more proactive in the way that we serve the customer, more proactive in the way that we touch them, work with them, communicate with them, and really provide service, which is something that's been lost because when the market's really good and things are really hot, you don't have to be that great at customer service, right? Because people aren't as concerned about it. They have more money to spend. But when things get hard and things are difficult for your customer, they're going to really challenge every dollar that they're spending.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing we can do is we can just spend more money on marketing and be better marketers. One, because it's the first thing that people turn off in a downturn, which means it's cheaper and more affordable for any business to spend, let alone your competitors against your competitors. So the overall inventory is open, it's cheaper. Your competitors aren't doing it, so it's cheaper in your market segment. And then 3, you can just be, better at it, create better content, be more consistent, do more distribution, include your team in the whole marketing landscape and equation.
Yeah.
And then we can also just get better at managing our operating expenses, right? How do we be more efficient with every dollar that we're spending to run the company? And then obviously that ties into just spending management. But then instead of being fearful, right, be greedy. I think it's going to set up some massive opportunities to acquire market share, maybe even acquire some competitors or some other companies. And if you can do that at the bottom, you'll come out the other side on top.
Yeah, and I would only add to that, take those same tenets and extend them even into your personal life, right?
Yeah.
So for example, in this season, how are you investing into the relationships within your family? Are you sort of shriveling up and saying, hey, I got a lot of this pressure, I got a lot of these different things on me, I got to really focus on this because we're going to be negatively impacted by the potential downwinds that are coming at the business. Everyone knows that, what happens in your business will affect your personal life. And so it's like, okay, well, bring them on board also, bring your family on board. What kind of conversations are you guys having about finances? Do the kids understand that, hey, mom and dad have to make some changes here to do this so we can be prepared for this? We see this coming that's going to impact the business and therefore us. Here's how, we're going to have to change the next, year and a half, 2 years, and what we do, what we prioritize. But look, on the back end of this will, should this all, work out, we'll be able to do this. And just that transparency, that sort of rallying of the team and everyone involved in lifting up the veil and saying, this is the situation, here's where the dollars are going, here's the threats. That same thing I think should extend into your personal life also.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's also just a good mindset reset, right? You constantly have to be taking inventory of like, what's everything that's going good in my life, right? Healthy family, healthy life, healthy wife, like everything is actually really good, and stack those wins, because it's easy to get this myopic view on the negative stuff and let it really spiral you out of control. Second to that, it's like, there's no winners and losers, right? So the worst thing that can happen, honestly, like if you really boil it down, is you lose your business, right? You go bankrupt. You're still alive, right? If your whole identity is wrapped up in that, well, then yeah, sure, you're gonna have a real problem. But that's the point I think you're getting at, right? Of like, it's not your identity. It ultimately doesn't matter. None of us can take it with us. Sure, we put a lot of time, energy, and effort into it, but you keep moving on, Yeah. And so if you can constantly weigh those things and kind of get above the situation at hand and look at it from a third-party perspective, it gets a whole heck of a lot easier to navigate.
Yeah, dude. And just one last thing, I'm reading this book, Business by the Book, and he shares how one of the things husbands don't do, particularly husbands that are entrepreneurs, is they don't talk to their wives about the business, and so they don't put themselves in a position to receive any counsel or insight from their wives. But he gives the story of this guy who was looking to sell his business, and it wasn't looking right, and they're in a meeting, and his wife basically asked to share an opinion, and she ends up dropping like these 3 gems just from watching over the years and listening and picking up on stuff and talking to employees and interactions. And they ultimately ended up changing the entire business model around her insight and became more successful, and got the employees involved, brought them into the business in greater ways, even financially. And it was just like, when you have that mentality, I got to do it all by myself, I'm not going to let anyone else know, I'm just going to be a pile of mess because I'm sitting there holding this all in. For my teammates, my partners, my family, my children, So
yeah, I agree. I mean, I seek my wife's counsel quite a bit because she's detached from it in a way. Like she knows about everything that's going on, but she has a third party perspective that is unique. and
Well,
unbiased.
and she's who God gave you, right?
Yeah,
It's like
exactly.
you got favor. It says for all you guys out there, if you're listening and you're not a Christian, I just want you to know something about your wife. Your wife is she's an extension of God's favor unto you. Like,
It
so you might not know that, but now you do. So you might want to go ask her some questions or
is.
some things she's been observing about you that you don't want to hear. But it's better that they come from her because she has your best interest in mind.
Yeah, that's for
So,
sure.
all right. So we went through all of that. I did have that clip on Larry Fink.
Let's
We
play.
don't
Let's
necessarily.
play it.
Okay.
Let's play it.
All
I
right.
want to see it.
So let's see what we got here for you guys. Pull this bad boy up. Boom. Larry. So this comes from Crypto T, and she says, let me just pause it, check my
Yeah,
volumes here. It says
BlackRock.
BlackRock is marketing Bitcoin hard. CEO says it needs to be in portfolios for uncorrelated returns.
So interesting.
I believe Bitcoin is legitimate. I'm not trying to say there's not misuses like everything else, but it is a legitimate financial instrument that allows you to have maybe uncorrelated, non-correlated type of returns. I believe it is an instrument that you invest in when you're more frightened, though. It is an instrument when you believe that countries are debasing their currency, debasing their currency by excess deficits, and some countries are. I believe we have countries where you're frightened of your everyday existence, and if you have an opportunity to invest in something that is outside your country's control, then you can have more financial control. And so I'm a major believer that there is a role for Bitcoin in portfolios.
Dude.
So yeah, I mean, yes, I agree, but I dislike that guy so much.
But dude, check this out though. If you're listening to that and you say, look at what he said, I believe this is something you invest in if this, what are they doing? Investing in it.
Yeah.
So bing, 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 don't, not to you guys, like separate the what it's like you said, follow the smart money that are virtually going to end up on the right side of the deal every time. Boom, boom, boom. He's telling you he can't come out and say it in so many words, but he's telling. I'm creating a hypothetical here.
Yep.
I was just like, wow.
You notice how he doesn't mention the United States. He's just saying in general, and
Did
it's
you see
happening.
his body language changed when he was alluding to the country? And
Yeah.
I'm saying a particular country, he kind of smirked a little bit.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
I love it. So we got to pay attention, man. We got to pay attention. All right, this next I found this quote from Iman. I think his name is Iman Gadzhi. Iman. Some people not everyone likes him. He's kind of
annoys me.
Yeah, I know that. But he had a great quote here, and this is what he said. He said, entrepreneurship. Oh, let me pull it up. You guys can't see it. Sorry, guys. He says, entrepreneurship can raise a boy into a man because in business, you're always bottlenecked by your level of personal development.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. Just, regardless of his brand and his content but it's true.
It's true. I mean, I spend a lot of time on my own personal development. I mean, we're constantly trading content, articles, videos, stories, talking to other people who know more than we do,
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah. And I think too, the thing I think I'm learning about personal development is some people in today's world, with all this media, you can think that personal development is like 27 different things that you have to do and routines but it's like, dude, are you keeping your word? Right? Are you keeping your word to fulfill the promises you've made to your family, your partners, your customers? Is your business doing that? Are you developing the necessary skills? Are you staying curious? Are you like it's like these are the things that really shape personal development. How's your health? Your time spent on taking care of your body, making sure your family's healthy and eating. It's not like 47 different things. And it's a major industry, right, of information. So it can seem like it's so much to tackle, but how's your character, how's your skills, how's your relationship, how's your health, like how's your business, those things, how the people that are closest to you and involved in the product, that's personal development, and you tending to those areas. And we've talked about it over the years, the 7 different
Yep.
the wheel, the Zig Ziglar wheel of optimal health and everything else. But
Yeah,
it's more simple than we think.
It's actually going to pull it up.
It's funny. I thought you were going to pull that up when I
just because I really I love this. Can you see that? All right.
I can't see it. Let me stop sharing. Go for it. Yeah.
So kind of a blurry version because I magnified a small image, but
it's fine. I zoomed in on it a little bit.
Yeah. So yes, I think as entrepreneurs, we tend to spend so much time focused on our business, and we're trying to develop there. Meanwhile, we're not recognizing like all the things that are around our life that make us who we are as a whole. We're neglecting our spiritual life, our physical health, our intellectual development, our family, our friends, our personal financial, and here it says career, but our business. And so the way that Zig Ziglar explains this is this wheel is, when it's balanced and all of these areas are properly inflated, your life actually rolls along pretty smoothly. But if any one of these areas is neglected, it kind of turns into more of a lopsided oval shape, which makes you kind of lump along as you go. And so, yeah, your business is great and you can be personally developing there. But if you're neglecting these other areas of your personal life, they're going to bleed over no matter how you like that. We all know that entrepreneur who super successful, gets divorced, doesn't know his kids hate his guts, married multiple times, drinking problem,
right,
physically unhealthy, right? All of those things. And so this is very, very true that can become the most important thing of your life. And though it's important is something you're passionate about, it's not your identity. It's not the only thing that you have in your life.
Yeah. And don't let the industry fool you, right? Don't let the content feeds fool you of just like, it just seems so big and so dense when you look at it from the standpoint of the industry and who's putting out what. You look on any platform, it's like 10,000 different videos on how to be more productive here, how to optimize this, how to do that, how I went from this to this. And it's just like, okay, time out. How's your character? How's your skills? How's the people closest to you and most impacted by your decisions? How's your business? It's like, so I thought that was a great quote to spin off some of those thoughts for you guys and for us to jump on a little bit. Well, speaking of someone who does this well, who I think really does this well, Alex Hormozi, and he's consistent and true to himself and his brand and everything he stands for. But he dropped a line here that was, he got asked to give new entrepreneurs advice. And here's what he said. I got asked to give new entrepreneurs advice before starting a 90-day sprint to start their first business. Here's the advice that I gave them. Number 1, follow instructions, meaning his instructions. Number 2, when you reach something you don't understand how to do, Google it first. When you figure it out, post it. Others may have struggled. That's a really good one right there. That's a really good
easy way to create content.
And not just for like starting your first, it's like now. When you actually figure it out, post it. Others may have struggled. Actually follow the rule of 100 daily. If you don't know what that is, that's when he's talking about, let's just say you might need to make, you might need to spend 100 minutes on creating posts or put out 100, send out 100 emails per day. It's taking whatever that input needs to be to produce an outcome or the output. You need to do 100 of that, 100 minutes, 100 in the amount, 100 reps. So it's just his basis of 100. So actually follow the rule of 100 daily. You will be excited for a week, then the excitement will wear off. That's when the work begins. Your work works on you more than you work on it. You are the product that's getting built more than your community. Remember that. Number 7, everything is unscalable in the beginning. That's the point. It's how you learn every piece of it. This is called mastery. Number 8, the pain of repetition is what forces you to seek improvement. When you figure out ways to get more for what you do, you have gained skill. Number 9, if you complain, you are dead to me. Number 10, literally thousands of people have already succeeded. You are not special. Repeat the same activities, repeat the same outcomes. That's really, really good. Number 11, write down every reason you're going to stick with it. Put it in front of you. Revisit when you need to remember to stick with it. Number 12, business is shockingly simple but surprisingly hard. The hard comes in the form of consistency. The moment you don't want to do it or just skip today is the day you realize what hard feels like. Overcome. Last but not least, 13, just win. And in paraphrasing, don't stop until you win.
Yeah.
So
that's true. I mean, that's the hardest thing about business in general is when the novelty wears off and it's dressed in overalls and looks like hard work. You know, can you stick with it? It's going to take longer than you think. It's going to be harder than you think. It's going to require more iteration, more review than you ever thought. And that's why most people can't do it. And, you know, you hear us talk a lot about buying a business is probably one of the greatest wealth building opportunities out there. But again, those same things still exist, right? It's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time. And you're buying a business with the intention of growing it, right? So yes, you have revenue and things coming in, but in order to get to the next level, it's going to require you to push through and do the work. And so, yeah, unfortunately in entrepreneurship, especially when you're really in it, there's no days off. One of the skills of entrepreneurship is to kind of achieve the pinnacle of freedom, right? You have first freedom is freedom of time. The second freedom is freedom of money. Then you have freedom of relationship and you have freedom of purpose. And when you build a company with people and systems and processes, then the company can run effectively without you. Then you're effectively freed up. You have this asset that's creating cash flow for you. And you can be freed up to, you know, work on your purpose, donate your time at your church or whatever that thing is. But all that takes hard work. And so it's funny. I actually, if you are a Christian and you're listening to this, in the New Testament, in the book of James, it talks specifically about faith without works is dead. Well, what's that doing in the New Testament, right? Because we all know that we can't work our way to heaven. What it's actually implying is faith or belief in something, a vision without action isn't really faith, right? And so in order for you to actually fulfill on a vision or for you to actually execute or act in faith, you have to be taking massive action towards that, right? We talked about this last week, but that goes back to kind of the four types of luck, right? The first type of luck is like luck by happenstance, right? And that's not how anything works in life. If I just pray hard enough about it, if I just think about it hard enough, it's just going to happen. A lot of luck is you make your own luck, right? You make that through action, through motion, right? You make that through awareness and developing a skill set and being unique in the marketplace. That's actually how it works. But a lot of times, we're waiting on God and he's just waiting on us.
Facts. I mean, oh, dude, Luke 16. I can go down. We can actually go to here because I've been reading Luke 16 quite a bit. And one of the things Jesus says, for those of you out there who don't read the scriptures at all, is he's sharing something, a parable with his disciples. But in the parable, he gives an example of how the sons of this world you can use unrighteous means better than those in the kingdom. So the way you would paraphrase that for contemporary is non-believers are better at using, the world and its resources to, accumulate wealth and do well in their work than Christians. And he's saying, don't let that be the case. And so if you're a believer and you're listening to this, you should be an example in your work, and just in all that you do as it relates to your business, of the very quality that resides in you through the Holy Spirit. And for those of you who are not Christians, you should be able to look at your Christian friends and be like, dude, you guys are top notch. You guys are top notch, man. And we
all
might not
those
agree.
pillars, and all those pillars that we talked about, you're killing it, right?
Yeah, you're killing it. And you can help me. How can I learn about this? How can I, you should be able to look at us and be like, they're solid. They're on point.
Yeah.
And not just checking boxes on point, but like they really believe what they say they believe, and it shows.
Yeah.
So
100%.
All right.
Well, pivoting off of that into one of our how dare you? One of our favorite segments of the show now is where we really talk about marketing and brand.
Yeah.
Which to us is probably one of the most important skill sets that entrepreneurs need to have today, and they're generally not very good at it. And so here we go.
Okay, so today for you guys, we're going to look at three. I only brought in three today. One's going to be an example of how to use your curiosity to produce content that then builds on a brand by another person. And then we're going to look at how you turn a mistake into a moneymaker, and then just how you use humor to share your opinion instead of just running to the internet and being like, I hate this about whatever's going on. So the first one here comes by way of Colin Landforce. Now, if you don't know who Colin Landforce is, that's okay. But if you're interested in branding in any way, brand building, content production, this guy, he's a great channel to follow. But he asked a question, and you can't see it. I just realized that. Now you guys can see it. Okay, so he asked the question, why do bitters have this jacked up label? I don't know if you've ever thought that, but I've thought that, and I happen to know this because I used to be a bartender. But he's using curiosity from something that we see every day that allows him to then position himself as an expert, someone passionate about brand building in his case. And it could be anything. It could be whatever you're passionate about or whatever your business is related to, diving into some of the unexplored things that everyone's thought about, but haven't taken the time to slow down and discuss. So here's Colin here.
Yo, why do bitters have these jacked up labels? This isn't just like a cool business story. There's a huge lesson here. Bear with me. So like 200 years ago, the brothers behind the Angostura brand were entering their recipe in a contest. One brother worked on the bottle, the other worked on the label. And at game time, they realized that they were both different sizes. So they slapped that label on the bottle and entered the contest anyway. They lose the contest, but the judge pulls them aside afterwards. And he tells them that wonky label they had really made the product stand out. So they ran with it. Look at this. Fast forward 200 years, and Angostura is probably one of the biggest brands in booze. More notably, their aesthetic and even the oversized label dominates their entire category. Look, this isn't just a cool story. This is your sign to make your brand weird, loud, different, anything but normal. I'm going to write more about this in my newsletter tomorrow. Hit the link in my bio to subscribe. Let's go.
Great piece of content.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah. History, something you didn't know. Positions himself as the curator of that history, therefore expertise and interest, then transitions it to his platform where he's building a community, and he puts out great content consistently.
Yeah. And I love the lesson.
Yeah.
Right. Something that could have stopped most people from actually following through. Right. They just ran with it, and it turned out to be the quirky thing that made them stand out.
Yeah. He's also got a great post. I was going to share it, but I didn't want to be glazing over Colin Landforce on this podcast, but he put out just a screenshot of like, hey, if you're looking to get started in producing better content and marketing, here's a checklist of some things you just need. You don't even need a whole lot. And I'll share it next week. How about that?
Okay.
All right. Next one here. This is how you turn some of the things that light you up into humor to illustrate the same point. So this, you guys remember over the last couple of weeks, we've been talking a lot about Springfield and Haitians and whether they're eating pets and various different things. Well, this gentleman, Toby Turner, and I don't know, I don't follow his channel at all, so I don't know if he's just a comedian at all. He is actually Comedy Musicer. Watch my cartoon. So he's a comedian of some sorts, and so he puts out comedic content. But if you were someone who wanted to share an opinion and you were worried about just being another person hopping into the storm of sharing my opinions and getting yelled at and everything else, because we do that now with these platforms, you can do something a little bit different that's going to get attention and create a sort of wider space for you to actually share your opinions and have discussions with people rather than just the text. And so here's Toby. And
do you have one of these guys? To us, they're just pets. But to some people, this little guy is the only thing standing between a happy Haitian family and starvation. With one pet per month, you can make a difference and help feed illegal Haitian migrants so they can stay here and live. Oh, there's another one. You little guys. If you have one too many dogs, why not just round down? One pet per month. You have a disgusting ferret, anything at all. Anything helps. She's just annoying. It's not even letting me record this video. Give him your mother. What?
So good. So just again, it's just another way of, rather than I create the tweet storm or go on LinkedIn and I vet the long thing. One way to get that and make that more impactful is to let me make a video, and then
And
me
he's in
come up
his
with a
he's in
different
his
idea.
lane too, right?
Right, right. And so you might have your lane. Maybe it's doing something in sports. I don't know. Create something that correlates to the thing you really want to share an opinion on, and then put it out there. All right, last one we got here. This is how you turn a mishap into a moneymaker. So you may have seen this one, but this one comes by way of Coors Light. And can you see that clearly? Let me make sure. Nope. All right, there we go.
There's one driven to right down the line toward the corner. That is foul.
With a little indentation into the can of Coors Light.
So Coors Light had its ad broken. The board broken at a game, and this is the story. I didn't tee it up properly. This is how they turned it into a multi-million-dollar idea. And so it says Coors Light had its ad broken by the greatest player in baseball.
Shohei Ohtani. He's the greatest baseball talent in the history of the sport of baseball.
He is to Japan what Messi is to Argentina.
They make up a commemorative series of cans. It has a locked out area, like when Shohei broke their neon sign.
Genius.
Coors Light has done some of the best reactive marketing I've seen in a while.
The top 5 best marketing campaigns in sports history.
It's especially impressive because Coors Light is not even the official beer of MLB, nor is Shohei Ohtani a Coors Light sponsored athlete.
Dang. That guy has just put a marker on there.
Look at that. So it took something that could have been bad. Someone had the insight and was like, wait a second, this could work for us. Take it. Now it's all over the place, right? Sold out in 24 hours. New markets open up to go international, people making their own knockoffs and everything else, and all of that without having an official relationship with this athlete. So
I love that kind of marketing. That's right up there with that famous Yelp review that the pizzeria got in New York. It said, come on in and try what one guy said was the worst pizza he ever had in his life. And they turned that, negative review into a positive. And as a byproduct of that, more people came in, ate the pizza, heard the story, and then wrote him a positive review on Yelp. And
wow,
he overcame the negative review.
And so why I pick it too is because those opportunities are happening all over the place.
Yeah.
And they're not just relegated to reactive marketing, whether it's you just being aware of different things that relate to your company that you can use. But you have to have, it's easy to say you have to have the presence of mind to do that. But what you have to have is an outlook that views, I guess the way I would put it would be that views media and the things happening around you through that lens of like, it slows it down, so to speak, and float above it, because we're getting inundated with so much information and input that it's easy to miss those opportunities. But if you actually, Alex Hormozi said it previously, he said it's shockingly simple but surprisingly hard. A lot of what it takes to produce the kind of content that can reach and have a virality component to it or get people talking about it is simple. But it's hard because you might have to wait longer. It might take longer to produce. You can't just pump it out like that. It takes some thought and some intention. And the people willing to put in that side of the work, just like on the business side, they reap the rewards. So
yeah, 100%.
All right. Last but not least, and this is a pivot here outside of the marketing into the political culture realm. I wanted to close with this clip that I found on X, and it comes by way of Lisa Hudson Chow, but she's posting it from another company called American Vanguard. And I'm just asking a simple question: is where are the children? That's the question the person who put it out is asking: is where are the children? And so, what do we mean by that? Well, we're going to find out here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we warned about America's new slave trade and how the Gulf Cartel in February of 21, when we broke this story, were moving men, women, and children as a commodity into this country. Look at what is finally coming out about what the story is we broke. Been called a liar, been called everything for this. Finally, take a listen.
They're tracking kids that come across the border, and presumably they're tracking them once they are released to somebody in the States?
Thank you for your question, Senator. So the cartels are bringing the children to the border in a very organized fashion using cloud technology to maintain a track of these children. Once they get to the border, they're told who to ask for to be their sponsor. The process works through, they go through ORR. The child says they identify the person they wish to be the sponsor. ORR is sending that child to an unvetted sponsor that is in connection with the cartels in Mexico.
And now
So I won't go through the whole 243 here, but I wanted to pull that in real quick because these things that people have been saying are happening and you're writing off, you're not a credible institution, this isn't journalism, more and more is coming to the light, just like, and we're having, like we talked about, we on the business side, the personal side, and the social side they're all converging of like, we're reaping what we're sowing, and we're going to have to deal with it. And so as entrepreneurs, we have to be aware of this stuff too, because this is happening in our own backyards. And you might see someone that looks like, little Sally, and actually she's not Sally at all. She's someone else's child that should be being in safe arms. And so granted, you don't need to be a vigilante, but you have to be aware of what's happening around you because we have been called to impact that as well.
Entrepreneurship does not allow you to stick your head in the sand.
No, not at all. Not at all. So on that note, don't stick your head in the sand. And if it is in the sand, I don't know, call for backup listen to this podcast. We'll pull you out of it.
Yeah, truth.
So roger that, man. Well, that's a wrap for the pod today.
Yeah, good work.
Good work, man. Appreciate everything. We appreciate your guys' time and attention, and we appreciate what you're doing in entrepreneurship alongside you. And until next week, adios.
Peace.